All right, welcome to ATW Live Monday, Inauguration Day. I'm Matt Taibbi.
And I'm Walter Kern.
Walter, how are you?
Well, it looks like I'm in a psychological thriller, or maybe 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I was getting a little Doctor Who vibe as
Really?
well. Yeah, you're kind of hurtling toward me a little bit.
I'm actually in the Grand Hyatt, not just the regular Hyatt
Wow.
hotel in the militarized zone of Washington, D.C., where the streets are slippery, the air is cold, but not terribly cold, and Donald Trump was just inaugurated. It's a fractured situation here because there was no central event that the public could attend. So they're just wandering the streets looking for that buzz, and
right.
stopping in front of strange, floats like the one that's playing YMCA on repeat outside my window on a.
They'll be dead by midnight if they keep that up. Right.
Well, it's a unity in the community float. It's Blacks for Trump, and the guy who's singing YMCA told a touching story that I hope is true. I'll report now about being in Las Vegas a couple of years ago and losing his gold bracelet, and who should find it but Donald Trump?
Wow.
And Trump had someone return the bracelet to this fellow. And the guy, I don't know, somehow either in person or by email or something, thanked Trump. And he said, someday I hope I have a children's charity. Someday I hope maybe, you can contribute to it or something like that. Trump said, come to Mar-a-Lago and do a benefit. I'll cover everything but the food. That was the touch of realism in the story.
Wow.
Yeah, and so now this guy is singing YMCA nonstop outside my window as, in gratitude.
That's great. I mean, look, I love the song. I'm not putting the song down. I'm just saying anything on a loop, like outside of a hotel, especially, that I think that's taking a big risk. I want to mention to the audience that Walter put me in a very bad mood just before we went on air by telling me last night that he
asked what I did last night,
yeah,
and I gave him a straight answer.
Yeah, and the straight answer included, let's just say, meeting Mike Tyson,
right.
who is not only one of my favorite athletes of all time, but absolutely my favorite sitcom performer of all time.
In what?
Mike Tyson Mysteries. If you haven't watched it, it's the
I've never seen it.
It's like Scooby-Doo meets Mike Tyson. It's the funniest thing that's ever been invented, and he voices himself in the show. It's hilarious. But you met Mike, and he was nice.
Okay, so I was at a dinner. As a journalist who's always suspected of spying, I have to keep confidences about my social life, or people will not invite me to anything anymore. But I think it's appropriate to say that Mike Tyson was at the dinner, and he's a lovely sweetheart of a guy. He asks questions, and not in that stagey way where a celebrity is asking me questions. No,
right.
He's just a guy from the grocery store who can beat anyone up.
Or used to be able to anyway.
He used to be able to, and therefore there's no reason for him not to be a nice guy.
Right.
And he was. And I was actually astonished by it, to be honest. He had no performative aura about him whatsoever. Why should he? He's Mike Tyson. Yeah. When you can do stuff, why try to be stuff?
That's right. Yeah. No, he's the greatest. I was at the unification fight where he knocked out Tyrell Biggs, and it was the most awesome thing I ever saw in person. So
really,
unbelievable athlete. I'm so jealous. And all
I can report about him, that is not private, I guess, is that he loves living in Las Vegas.
Really?
But he used to love it more.
So did Sonny Liston, but for a different reason. Yeah.
Here's to put something simply that restores my faith in humanity. When you're the heavyweight champion of the world in mob-run Las Vegas 35 years ago, when he told me he moved there is nothing better. That's the peak of human existence. He told me that when somebody would, I said, why did you like Las Vegas as much as you did back then when the mob ran it? He said, rather than the corporations, which are the real mob who run it now. And he said, well, if somebody stole something from you, the next day, a mobster marched that guy into the room and made him return it to you in person. And I went, that's civilization.
I love it. That's fantastic. Probably before some other things happened too, but that's great.
When you realize you stole from Mike Tyson, I think anything that happens after that is on you.
Yeah, that's the beginning of the story, I think.
Right.
Okay, well, a lot to get to today. Enormous, massive news day, not because it's Inauguration Day, but I also did just sort of want to, at the beginning, mention this is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And I have a tradition. I don't know about you, Walter. Every year on MLK Day, I go back and I either read something by him or watch a speech. And thought maybe we could each recommend something that we like to read or listen to of his.
Letter from Birmingham jail.
Yeah, that's a great one. I don't know how you feel. I think he's a terrific writer in addition to being obviously a great speaker. But so many of his speeches are much more subtle than he's given credit for. His choice of words are beautiful to listen to even today. And I was watching last night a speech called The Other America, which he gave. It was about race, but it was during the period when he was talking a lot about Vietnam, and he was kind of reflecting on sort of successes and failures of his movement, the March on Selma and all these other things. Fascinating speech. Highly recommend everybody listen to it. Go back and check it out on YouTube or read the text somewhere online. Do you have a favorite? Is it the letter?
To bring it all back to Mike Tyson and link it with MLK, I had a college professor, the great novelist Joyce Carol Oates, and she would
big boxing fan. Mm-hmm.
Big boxing fan, and she loved Mike Tyson, and she hung out with him, and I believe she wrote about him. But in any case, Joyce would recommend the Letter from Birmingham Jail as a piece of literature. She's a person of the highest standards, obviously, and so it affirms what you just said, I think, about his talents as a writer. Anybody who's interested in Martin Luther King or the civil rights era, I urge them, if they haven't already gone, to go to Memphis and go to the Civil Rights Museum there, which ends in the hotel room, the motel room.
Yep.
In other words, you go on a tour through the museum and you come out in the Lorraine Hotel, in the balcony room, across from Jackson was, across from which the sniper, we'll call him the sniper because there seems to be MLK truth in the offing with Donald Trump, and we're maybe going to learn that James Earl Ray was the guy, or maybe there's more to it. Who knows?
Really?
Yes, absolutely. He spoke about it yesterday.
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah,
he was watching the Ravens game.
Trump has promised more information on that assassination. But in any case, the museum in Memphis is great. It's one of those new style experiential museums in which you sort of take a fixed path through various displays. And I can't recommend it highly enough. There's another Museum of Civil Rights in Jackson, Mississippi, that is also terrific.
I haven't been to that one. That's interesting. I'll have to check that out.
Jackson, Mississippi is a museum of the civil rights era itself. I mean, it's a city in which burned churches and so on have never been rebuilt. They're just sitting there covered in vines in forlorn neighborhoods. It's an interesting place.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, a lot of dark stories from America, and actually, that's one of the things he talks about is that there's sides of America that some people see and some people don't. So, it's fascinating. It would be fascinating to go back and look. All right, we got to get to today. Today was a crazy news day. Forget about. Should we get to the Trump stuff later? Because Trump has already done some pretty far out things. Apparently, he's already renamed the Gulf of America and some other things. He's talking about California, apparently accusing them of fraud in this election. But the big stunner of the day is the flurry of last-minute pardons from Joe Biden. And these are preemptive pardons, and there's a whole bunch of them. We can just take a look at a couple. If we can see, let's just see the like 12, 13 here. We got the family pardons. This was the last one. It's a little bit like the MLB trading deadline, which is 3 p.m. Eastern every year. But some trades come in at 3:08 or 3:10 because the paperwork is being processed. That's what today felt like. There were still pardons coming in right till the very last minute of the presidency. And so this is the Biden family pardon. There's another one from Mark Milley. You can see here. If you look, and then there the two really controversial ones are the J6. Here, Anthony Fauci. No, we'll get to if you see that date there at the very middle. For any offenses against the United States which he may have committed or taken part in during the period from January 1st, 2014. That date is very significant. Why backdate it that much? We're going to get to that. And then I guess the last one is the J6 committee. And this
the J6 committee and its staffers and whoever can claim to be covered by this.
Yeah, and really oddly, the witnesses and the police officers from the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department or the U.S. Capitol Police who testified before the Select Committee. That is a very strange inclusion.
Well, it's for perjury.
Well, yes, right, yes, okay.
That's what it's for, Matt. I'm sitting here acting like I'm a normal person right now. I'm going to tell you. I have never been so disgusted with my American government as I am right now. To me, this was the day the fucking music died. These people commenced or how can I put it? Consummated decades of corruption in a way that was absolutely breathtaking by pardoning himself at the same moment the next president was getting up to speak.
Did he actually pardon himself?
Well, he pardoned his family, whatever.
His family,
everybody around him, everybody who could touch him, everybody who could testify. And this whole bullshit pipe dream of Americans that this gives them no coverage under the Fifth Amendment, so that they're all going to sing and tell the truth, and we're going to have reconciliation and all that. That is good old American smoke in the pipe. The fact is that we just saw a gigantic mafia operation pull down a veil over itself after the press and every other institutional interest in America has spent the entire time, last 4 years, and God knows how long before that, covering for them.
Yeah,
I felt like I was watching the death of the Republic in that Capitol Rotunda, and the gall to do it. And conceal it behind the next president's inaugural address. My God.
Yeah, it's remarkable. I mean, look, unpopular pardons, and we talked about this when the stories first dropped about the possibility of these things. And by the way, the coverage, because I listened to coverage on both conservative and kind of ex-mainstream media today about these pardons, and they're doing a very tricky thing on MSNBC and on CNN. They're saying things like, "We've known for a while that these were coming," or
I heard that bullshit too.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be eloquent today. This was the utter demise of the formerly mainstream media. I don't want to ever see them again. If they walk up to me at a party, I will not be polite to them. They betrayed the freaking profession that I gave my life to, betrayed it consistently, systematically, in a partisan and completely determined and programmatic fashion. They did it in the
consciously,
wittingly, knowing that they were covered, knowing that that the power would, if they did anything wrong, come out and pardon them. And they did it not only in moral and legal terms, they did it in practical terms. They brought us to the brink of World War III with a senile, incompetent president who could not have possibly been in control of his decision making. They hid the nature of American government from the American people. They went to parties. They talked behind our backs about this. I watched it happen the whole time. I've watched this generation of journalists grow up for decades. They are utter careerist, status hungry, psycho fools who have gotten a little bit of money and a little bit of fame in return for betraying not only their country, but their the entire tradition of truth telling, which they have veiled and draped themselves in, telling us
that is extremely tough to take. That part.
They're afraid of going to camps. Democracy dies in darkness. All the news that's fit to print. They jerked each other off with fucking awards. So they shoved Pulitzers up their asses. They fucking made a spectacle of something that will never be restored.
Oh, Walter.
It will never be restored, and it can't be, and it should not be. They sit there today, sitting in judgment on Hitler, the person that weeks ago they were telling us was the beginning of the fascist reign of the American post-democratic system. They should be swept away. They should be boycotted. They should be shunned socially. They should be harassed on social media in the most polite manner possible, and the whole thing has to go, because it led us to a pass which almost ended us. And they practiced it.
And by the way, and them and their. I mean, look, they would probably still have had a job, but
they got their cheap thrills.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. And it's good that you used the word cheap. You mentioned that they got a little bit of money. This is the part that drives me nuts. Remember Casablanca, the scene where Peter Lorre is talking to Humphrey Bogart in the beginning, and he, asks him, "Do you despise me?" And Bogart says, "I don't object to a swindler. I don't object to a smuggler. I object to a cut rate one." And if you're gonna sell out for a lot. Right? Don't sell out for $68,000 or whatever it is. These people
they sold out for restaurant grade kitchen appliances. Okay,
right? Yeah, exactly, for second place on some game show, basically.
So they didn't have to buy wine from the grocery store. They could actually go to a wine only shop. These are the people that I have least affection for in the world right now. Not only did they cover up the status of the president. Yesterday, Mike Johnson comes out and said he doesn't know what he's signing. The Speaker of the House. He has a CIA director at his side. You're not allowed to see him unless he's got the CIA director at his side.
Biden?
Yes, that's what Mike Johnson said yesterday.
Unbelievable.
And who got attacked? Mike Johnson.
Really?
Why didn't he tell us? Why we would have believed Mike Johnson. We didn't believe anyone else. In fact, he did tell you. He told you in the Wall Street Journal. He told you in March. He told you on the news in June. But it's all his fault. What in the gosh darn hell? This is a guy who told us every day during the campaign that he was working day and night to end the Israeli bombardment of Gaza.
Yeah, and then it's over in 10 seconds, right? Yeah.
And it's over in 10 seconds.
Right.
These are the biggest group of mobsters, con artists, and liars ever to come down at the pipe, and their advance men were the press. And I promise you, audience, you will never see a word of mine in any of their newspapers, magazines again. ever.
No, I mean the performance couldn't have been more disgraceful. It's funny. I went back and looked for a single article that raised the question: is it legal for a non-competent president or for someone other than the president to sign presidential documents? Right? Because it would seem like that issue would come up in the last 4 years. If Biden is unfit to run for office, how can he be signing all these things? Right? How can that be legal? There is not one article. The only thing I found on that issue, and I spent a long time looking for any kind of research about this, was an ancient story about Barack Obama's use of something called the auto pen, which is where you give verbal consent to an aide to turn on a machine to sign documents for. It's never, that came up once in the context of Biden, but there's nothing about, they've never even asked the question, like, who's actually signing all this shit? Who's making these decisions?
Matt, there were a million stories to be reported. Not only were they not reported, they pretended that they didn't exist. Not only did they pretend they didn't exist, they actively sought creative storytelling techniques by which they could cover this thing. Oh my God, they wrote heartfelt pieces about his childhood stutter. Oh my God, they came up with, bleeding heart stories about, the difficulties Biden has had through the years. They made him a victim. They lied and they lied and they lied, not just affirmatively, but creatively. And they got us to a point where we're shooting missiles into Russia. They got us to a point where, there's war all over the place. How can I put it? That our tech world and our world of sort of surveillance and censorship is running full tilt against the truth tellers of America. A non-competent president presided over the injection of the entire U.S. military with a kind of vaccine, quote unquote, that had never existed before. An mRNA vaccine that was not related to previous vaccines such as we know them.
Which one was that? I don't even know this story.
The mRNA vaccine, the COVID vaccine.
Oh, the COVID vaccine, right? Yes.
The COVID vaccine is of a novel variety, not ever used at scale, and it was injected into every willing member of the U.S. Armed Forces, and those who wouldn't take it were thrown out. We allowed that in this country. We allowed the commander-in-chief, who is now revealed to have been incompetent and non-compos mentis, to take a medicine and stick it into the arms of every single armed service member. I can't think of anything more devastating. If I wrote a novel about that, you wouldn't believe it.
And did we see any stories wondering if that was Biden's decision or whether it was Ron Klain, who just happened to be the Barack Obama's Ebola coordinator and a huge vaccine enthusiast whose one of whose driving ambitions was to make sure that absolutely everybody in the world got vaccinated, was a massive supporter of mandates, supported that workaround that they did before they went for the full federal mandate. Ron Klain was like the gatekeeper to Joe Biden for the first 2 years of his presidency, and nobody even asked the question, who's making calls like this? Is it him? Is it Biden? Like
the layers of deception and active propaganda were so thick that you still don't know who made all the major decisions of the Biden presidency, and may never know now, because they just threw the cloak of silence and darkness over the whole damn thing.
Well, yeah, we may never know about these people, but I'm thinking about making an effort at the kind of third layer,
which is,
well, no, I mean like the people who worked below the people who were talking to the Ron Klains and Steve Richetti's and Mike Donilons of the world who are actually in the White House, because there's going to be some people with stories to tell, and they're not going to be terribly incentivized, I don't think, to stay quiet forever. So somebody's going to get to those folks. But
if anyone can do it, you can.
I don't know.
I'm fully, I'm fully confident of that. But I will say this: they're going to cover it up like they covered everything else up, and the press is going to move on. They have declared absolute official incuriosity about the past up until this point. They're absolutely devoted, as I think, collaborators, to keeping this whole thing obscure forever and ever. And there may be a memoir here and there, but what does that matter? They never match up. They never add up. We have no authoritative way to ever find out on a large scale what has just gone on. It was an abrogation of the American system, constitution, spirit, fourth estate, or whatever they call themselves now, because I don't really want to associate with them, frankly. I saw Jake Tapper today, and I just thought, my God.
we have
My
some Jake
God,
Tapper
dude.
video, I think. Hang on a second. Let's see. Where do we put that? I'll look for it. Hang on a minute. But what did he say?
Well, I mean, I'm just having a hard time remaining coherent here because I'm just so exercised to be in the middle of this. They've known for weeks. Well, why didn't they fucking report it then? If they knew for weeks that he was going to pardon General Milley, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. What?
Yeah.
Are military coups legal now in America? I mean, I'm serious. If you can arrange by corrupt practices your own installation as president, apparently you can also arrange for the complete cover-up of the operation to get you there. And Mark Milley, who was involved with January 6th, the January 6th committee, whose job was truth-telling, which they didn't do, and Anthony Fauci, a biowarfare expert, frankly, who presided over the creation of the virus that infected the world, is now going to go sleep on a beach under a fucking parasol? They have taken all of what America should be concerned about and what touched us in our daily lives. Man, people lost their lives. Kids in my town committed suicide during Anthony Fauci's lockdown. I'm not going to forgive him. Never. And we now have, and it's not just me, we now have a director of the NIH, Jay Bhattacharya, who warned against this, was persecuted by the Biden administration through their social media apparatus, and who is taking over the entire health and medical research segment of the American government. Mm-hmm. And the guy who basically made him well known by persecuting him for telling the truth, talking about a study that he'd done which showed COVID not to be as deadly,
but more infectious.
And more infectious. Well, he basically showed that the lockdowns were already too late in March 2020. Right. The seroprevalence of the virus was such that you were closing the barn door afterwards. This guy has to come in and clean up his mess, while that guy, the highest paid member of the U.S. government, Dr. Anthony Fauci, sexy man, goes and skates off into the frickin' sunset, having people all over the country affected in the most intimate ways, whether they're financial, medical, social, emotional, by his decisions. He can't answer for them. He won't answer for them. All after this God-forsaken song and dance of prosecuting Trump for every goddamn, foible in his life, not using the right form to get rid of rid of the hooker. Right. I've never seen anything like it. Biden, in his pardon of the J6 committee and others, cited the financial difficulty of people who face legal.
Did he write that in his pardon?
Difficulties. Yes. He talked about how difficult it is for families to pay legal bills. There's hundreds and hundreds of people sitting in jails right here, right now.
Unbelievable. Well, I mean, but Fauci is in the middle, and we talked about this with the Hunter Biden thing. It's not so much of a big deal when, you know, one person gets off for a crime. It's a problem when active investigations that, you know, are wide and far-reaching are cut off because someone's given a pardon. And Fauci was in the middle of multiple major investigations, everything from look, why is that date 2014 on his pardon? Because if we could take a look, where is it? Okay, number 6, I think it is. It's the ban of no, we want to look at the So if you can see here, way back in 2014, United States sort of banned gain of function research. This is sort of the tail end of the Obama years. It was, I believe, in October that they did this of that year, and but Fauci, one of the things that they have him on, in addition to probably perjury, let's look at his answer to the questioning from Rand Paul about this issue.
Not now fund gain of function research in the Wuhan Institute.
Do they fund Dr. Barrick?
We do not fund.
Do you fund Dr. Barrick's gain of function research?
Dr. Barrett does not doing gain of function research, and if it is, it's according to the guidelines, and it is being conducted in North Carolina.
You don't think inserting a bat virus spike protein that he got from the Wuhan Institute into the SARS virus is gain of function?
That is
you would
not
be in the minority, because at least 200 scientists have signed a statement from the Cambridge Working Group saying that it is gain of function.
Well, it is not. And if you look at the grant and you look at the progress reports, it is not gain of function, despite the fact that people tweet that.
So do you still support sending money to the Wuhan Virology Institute?
We do not send money now to the Wuhan
Do you
Virology
support
Institute.
sending money? We did under your tutelage. We were sending it through EcoHealth. It was a sub-agency and a sub-grant. Do you support the money from NIH that was going to the Wuhan Institute?
Let me explain to you why that was done.
Okay, look, we can stop here.
Dude, the entire misinformation and disinformation complex that we speak about sometimes, this whole suite of NGOs, government agencies, intelligence and law enforcement officials interpenetrating the various social media companies, was built around protecting that guy's lies.
Right. I think that's a fair statement. I mean, look, those programs were already in existence, but they had to activate every single tool that they had to make this one work. And even in that one little exchange there, you know, the question is simple. Did you fund gain of function research? Were you doing it? Was Dr. Barrick doing it? And he says no. Then, you know, what happened was later he clarified, and he was referring to gain of function as defined by the P3CO framework or something like that. He was trying to take this sort of semantic wriggle out of what everybody understood gain of function to be, which is you take a virus and you make it more lethal or make it more infectious or whatever it is for whatever reason. Clearly violative of the ban going back to 2014. So this is why that date on there is telling you what the crime is. Not only
the biowarfare research that changed our world, that caused kids in my small town to kill themselves, that caused businesses to close, which will never reopen, which turned America against itself internally in a way I have never seen in my lifetime, with people pointing at each other in the grocery stores, with people despairing because they couldn't go to work anymore, with the laptop class sitting like the people who didn't have to go to the Vietnam War, comfortably immune to the draft in its house, ordering food from fucking Uber Eats,
And looking aghast at people who don't have their masks on outside.
And looking aghast at others.
Yeah.
That created an almost sort of instant apartheid around politics and health that was easily transparent, and it had nothing to do with medicine and everything to do with party and political affiliation, was all the work of this liar who comes on and wants to tell us what the meaning of is, or some other lawyerly thing, which I was the son of a lawyer. I recognize this kind of thing from a mile away. And all of that is going to be covered up. Hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars that went into vaccines that Fauci assured us were far more effective than they've turned out to be, and which are constantly being revealed to have health consequences for all kinds of people. You just saw the publisher of the LA Times, the doctor, come out last week, I forget his name, and say he had to speak up about the COVID vaccine. For the first time in his practice, he's seeing certain kind of cancers in children that he's never seen before. What in God's name is America about if it's not about some sort of reckoning with common sense truth? And these people just thought they got fancy on us. They thought that by, pardoning themselves on the last day in this infinite fashion for crimes that will never be specified, they got away with murder. Well, good riddance to all of them. And there's a certain temperament which would say they did the new America a favor by, giving themselves the scarlet letter and getting out of the way. I totally disagree. They are Al-Qaeda in the caves. They will go back, they will reorganize, they will reorient, they will take their ill-gotten gains, the massive amounts of money that were made, the massive amounts of money that was skimmed, and the board jobs and the other things that they'll now be eligible but wouldn't be otherwise because companies wouldn't want to hire somebody under investigation. And they will keep it going.
And just with Fauci, think of all the things that we're now not going to know, probably, right? This gets to COVID origins. This gets to, what was there incompetence or corruption in terms of the preparedness for the pandemic, because people who knew what was happening at Wuhan didn't want to say anything on time, right? There were certainly absolutely lying about where the virus came from. I know for a fact from talking to fairly high-ranking people in the CDC that the government had information that it wasn't the wet market very early, right? And yet we told that story repeatedly. So there's the whole question of did we improperly prepare this population for the pandemic, because we were trying to cover up the fact that not only was our research at the Wuhan Institute, but we also may have had intelligence assets there. That's another question that's going to come out, or that would have come out otherwise. There's the censorship aspect. There's the trying to steer investigations away from all this aspect. I mean, there's so much shit here that they just put a cork in. It's just unbelievable. And the perjury thing, I know it's small, but that's also an issue. I think you can't
perjury in front of Congress on the matter of the public health of the United States is not a small thing. But all of it comes together to tell me that we're in a new era, and I mean that by that I mean in France they say the Third Republic, the Fourth Republic. In other words, they distinguish between eras in their governance, and I think we should too, because when you put together the whole group, Mark Milley's generation of military leaders, Anthony Fauci's generation of health leaders that goes back to the AIDS virus, and before, the Biden family, the oldest or the longest serving major politician in America, Joe Biden, and his family, his brother. Did you know, America, that James Biden is a criminal? Did you know that until today? Most people don't dig that deep Well, I did. And I'm proud to say that I did because he just admitted it. His brother just admitted it, as far as I'm concerned, because legally, a pardon, according to the Biden's own DOG, is an admission of guilt.
Actually, let's show that, because this is important. This is coming up now today. I want to answer this person's question in a moment. GWB is saying, yes, the vaccine stuff caused consternations, but what about the ones...
Fauci killed them too, mister.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the whole point.
What, did you just listen to what I was saying? Did you just listen to the testimony? Did you know where the virus came from? What are you asking exactly?
I mean, there's pretty strong evidence that this was... The idea here was that they were trying to build create a virus that could be used to deliver a vaccine. So they created a highly transmissible disease that would be almost asymptomatic, that would not do a lot of damage, but would be able to carry something like that. That was the concept as it was explained to me, and then they screwed up and it leaked out, right?
I don't believe that for a second. I don't believe, Matt. Why do we believe they're stacked cover stories? They have retreats built into retreats. They have backstops against backstops. I am not prepared to say that the virus came from a lab in Wuhan. I mean, but Fauci just said, "Oh, you're talking about North Carolina. You're talking about Ralph."
Well,
Barrett's
North Carolina feeds into
yes.
Wuhan, though.
Well,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to trace this virus back. My prediction is, and find out the entire timeline is a scam. It's a scam. The vaccine existed for years, many years. The Moderna mRNA patents were practically about to expire in some cases. In that case, I am not just speaking off the cuff here. Okay, I have as sources and as correspondents and as friends some of the most learned and accomplished researchers into these questions on Earth. The ones who haven't been discredited, the ones who haven't had to be issued pardons, okay, because they didn't do anything, unlike the people who did. And they are of one voice about certain things, mostly that everything about the official story was a lie. Everything. And so why I would guess that certain theories that they also floated, which are more controversial than others, will turn out to be the truth, I don't know. These people aren't truth tellers. They just admitted some sort of criminal behavior of an unspecified sort, and anything that comes from them is absolutely poisonous. And frankly, most of the conspiracy theories about it come from them too. They're probably not they're not as damaging as the truth, because they do this. They bracket their behavior with fallback positions that really often lead in absolutely the wrong direction.
Yeah, no, that's true. And maybe I'm being a little bit naive, but yeah, as to the question of, is it an admission of guilt? Yeah, the Justice Department has said openly that it is an admission of guilt if you accept a pardon. If we can take a look there, I believe it was it's like USA v. Weinhardt, or I think is the case. Yeah, if we could blow it up. Here it is. Yeah. Weingart, Dova Weingart. I think this is a J6 defendant, if I'm not mistaken. But if you go down to the second page, here we go. Right at the middle there, and a pardon. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. That's right. But a defendant's personal motivation to avoid public disclosure of her judgment of conviction is no reason to delay entry of judgment and deviate from the regular order of criminal procedure. And even if the defendant were to receive a pardon at some unspecified date in the future, which is purely speculative at this juncture, that pardon would not unring the bell of conviction. In fact, quite the opposite. The defendant would first have to accept the pardon, which necessitates a confession of guilt. So,
did you see any confessions of guilt today?
Well, what this is saying is by accepting the pardon, you are in fact de facto confessing, even if there's no specified crime.
But in the very language of the pardons, it stipulated that this reflects not at all on
Right.
any possible criminality.
Right.
A direct, flagrant, absolute contradiction with this legal judgment.
Let's take a look at the family one. What's the language in that pardon?
The things that were issued today were papal, not presidential.
Yeah, they're like encyclicals, right? Okay, it's a grant of clemency. It doesn't really say, right?
Well, not on there, but the letter, the letter that Biden wrote.
Oh,
the thing the thing that he put up on Twitter. Yeah, there you go.
Well, okay, so
whatever.
Right.
That the Biden bots put up.
Let's see. Where's that portion? Hang on a second.
Down toward the end.
Yeah, here it is. Even
I
when
believe in the rule of law.
Right. I believe
that's like people who believe in God and go out and kill somebody.
Right.
Just because you believe in it doesn't mean you've acted according to it.
Even when individuals have done nothing wrong and in fact have done the right thing and will ultimately be exonerated, the mere fact of being investigated or prosecuted can irreparably damage reputations and finances. So that's the polar
how can they be exonerated?
Well,
in what proceeding?
Yeah,
be exonerated?
That's just a bad writer. Exonerated, I think, is the wrong word that they're picking there.
But they're picking. This is the president of the United States in a legal document that affects the most important people in the world, and he can't get the language right.
Yeah, well, Biden didn't write this, right? I mean, this is the thing that drives me nuts. I tweeted out when this came out. Who wrote this? Right?
Not a lawyer. It doesn't look like a lawyer wrote it to me.
I don't think a lawyer wrote this.
Its concepts are not legal. They're gibberish.
Yeah.
Ultimately be exonerated. What? We're all innocent until proven guilty in America. We don't have legal proceedings which exonerate people. We have ones which convict people. Okay. They can't be convicted now, so they'll certainly never be exonerated.
Well, and this is what I had a little bit of a whiff of Adam Schiff in this speech because it reminded me of the end of the Mueller probe. Remember when that came out, Snake Eyes, and everybody was all bummed out? Oh my God, we don't have a case. And then Mueller issued some kind of a thing saying that it doesn't mean that they're not exonerated, right? This report means that
I remember that.
And that was something that Schiff was very big on, this whole idea of like just because the report didn't find a chargeable crime doesn't mean that there isn't disloyalty to country and all this stuff.
My God, what Orwellian hell have we been living in which the same government that tells us that the presumption of innocence and not being found guilty doesn't mean you aren't. Well, but being pardoned for crimes doesn't mean you'd ever committed one. I mean, between those two illogical and anti-legal statements, you have a mist of stupidity and illegality that is almost infinite. You're found not guilty, but you can still be guilty. You're pardoned, but you can still be innocent. What?
I mean,
only in America.
He wrote a whole book on the concept of not exonerated, right? I mean, I think we both read that one. The trial. It's like it was a totally un-American.
Dude, this is Inside Out Kafka. That's what you just said the right thing. You made the right reference. This is Inside Out Kafka. Kafka wrote books about people, little people in the Austro-Hungarian Empire who were bewildered by their abuse from a system that they couldn't fathom, never got to see, charges they never got to hear. Reverse Kafka is like Joseph Heller or Catch-22, where the people at the very top of society with everything use logical strategies to completely immunize themselves against consequences. So if Kafka is about little people being persecuted in mysterious ways, this is about big people exonerating themselves using tricks available only to the very well lawyered and the presidentially connected. It is a farce of sickening and absolutely historic proportions that cannot be forgotten. It can't be forgotten. The Supreme Court has to go and look at this stuff. I mean, if you can just draw a line between now and then and pardon for anything in between, people bring up Nixon.
And the going forward pardons too.
The going forward, dude, this, like I say, I don't think even Jesus has a going forward pardon.
I know.
There are only small sects of Christianity called perfectionists who believe that you are absolutely covered by the crucifixion, no matter what you do and when you do it. They are
never heard of that.
The novelist Robert Stone taught me about that.
Huh.
He was a great scholar of religion. But the general and orthodox view is that even Jesus can't cover you for the murder you go out and commit the day after you repent.
Right.
But the American government, now exceeding the powers of the Savior himself, has found a way.
And this is amazing because there are people today who are going off on social media talking about how come you didn't complain about Trump's pardons of the gazillions of people that he pardoned? Look, there are pardons of Trump's that I didn't like.
Pardoned his whole family?
Right. Yeah. This whole preemptive thing, it's in a different universe. I think people don't understand that this is a completely new situation here.
Americans who wish to rationalize this need to ask themselves a question. Why? Are they related to the Bidens? Do they take money from them? Are they their college classmates? Because if you are anything other than a religionist, conspiracist, or family member, you have no reason to make these leaps and contort yourself. Your hatred of Donald Trump is not enough. I'm sorry. That doesn't cover you anymore. You know, that John Prine had a song, "Your flag pin won't get you into heaven anymore." It was about the Vietnam era conservatives. Well, right. I will say your fucking anti-Trump feelings will not get you into heaven anymore. That's over, people. You're going to have to return to the world of law, logic, common sense, and social responsibility and accountability. Your Donald Trump hatred won't get you saved.
I don't think these stories have anything to do with Donald Trump, frankly. I think we're the last 8 years. So today, it covers the J6 committee. I guess that's really at its heart a Trump story.
I presume J6 to have been false.
You presume that the whole thing?
I presume it was false now, and I have every reason to believe that because the entire committee appointed by U.S. Congress to investigate it has just immunized the witnesses in a way that suggests that they may have perjured themselves. Because what else would they have? How else would they be in legal jeopardy for being police?
Well, and again, this is where that weird statement by whoever is writing Joe Biden's Twitter account is so weird. Even when individuals have done nothing wrong, it's baseless and politically motivated investigations wreak havoc on the lives, safety, and financial security. Blah blah blah.
This is from the people who dinged Trump for every fucking thing they could that made a jihad. I mean, we're going to have to return to earth. Sorry. How many prosecutions came to nothing? How much raiding of the former president's home, lawfare, deluxe, have they visited on not him only, but his associates, many of his associates from the beginning of his administration. And we're supposed to listen to this language anymore?
Yeah, the only thing, and this is playing a little bit of devil's advocate, Trump has publicly come out and said, I'm going after these people in ways that I think if it were not Donald Trump, we would make a bigger deal out of it.
Matt, the fear of the law is the only way that people will be disciplined in power to act and behave correctly. He faced trial after trial, but they can't. The people who fucking put him on trial. I mean, we've got a Donald Trump exception for bad behavior. We've got a Donald Trump exception for anything. It's the asterisk through which they drove World War III almost.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. I'm just saying, I'm trying to, from their point of view,
steel man the argument. Yeah.
Yeah. And what they could say is, yes, there will be attempts to come after these folks, but I think most of these pardons actually, the targeted nature of them, and especially the Fauci one with that date, which just basically screams, we know exactly what you're going to accuse this person of, and we're going to give him a pardon for this thing that he actually did.
Why did General Milley need a pardon?
So this is the story. I'm not as up on the Milley side of this. So why do you think Milley needed a pardon?
Well, I guess I'll never find out, because I didn't think he needed one until he got one. I have no idea what his exposure is. I have no idea what he's afraid of. Did he plot in a 7 days in May fashion against the president? I don't know. He is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It is our greatest nightmare in America, supposedly, that we would have a military dictatorship. And today, a Milley who served under Trump, right? Who didn't just serve under Biden. So, and Fauci, who served under Trump, by the way, are pardoned for what could have been disloyal and absolutely, how can I put it, unconstitutional conduct by the military against a civilian president. The direst of crimes in the American constitutional republic. What else would General Milley have done? Was it for shoplifting? I mean, was it for sex crimes? It could only possibly refer to his conduct under the president of the United States, who he has meant to take orders from, Donald Trump. Now, we know rumors of his calls to China saying, hey, if Trump starts something, I'll make sure to warn you first, and so on. Is it for that? Is it for his conduct during January 6th, which he also had involvement in?
He claims to be afraid of it because of his public statements.
Oh, bullshit. How many people? Well, then Rachel Maddow should have gotten a pardon.
Yeah. By the way, I would love to. We should peek in maybe one last time at CNN today or MSNBC if we get a few minutes. I'd like to see what they're covering. But also, I want to take a look at Dana Bash talked to Fauci this morning, and that was kind of interesting.
Dude, John Kelly, and other generals said Trump, slurred soldiers, military service itself, at a Normandy commemoration service, said this, that. How come the other guys who talked dirty about Donald Trump didn't get a pardon? Give me a break, Milley. I went to Princeton University. This guy is on the cover of the frickin' alumni magazine, covered in his medals in his office. He's so big,
he's like a Soviet, right? Yeah, exactly.
The general who went to Princeton. And he gets it. Why? There are many military people who said just as terrible things about Donald Trump. No, this guy did something. He did something as the head of the military, and we're not allowed to find out.
And they also cut off one of the major entry points for investigation into Russiagate with Schiff, COVID with Fauci. I mean,
I saw a report today that Schiff turned down the pardon. Is that true?
That's interesting. Well,
That,
that
he,
would be
that he refused? I don't know. At some days where there's so
he
much
would still be
news,
covered in a limited way, but during his Senate service, so there's
Sure.
that too. But anyway, let's listen to what Fauci said this morning in response. He talked about being very appreciative. I don't think he went so far as to say that he accepted it.
I talked briefly to Anthony Fauci, who got one of the pardons, who said he is very appreciative of what President Biden did. He said, and again, he has done nothing wrong, but there are baseless accusations against him in his view, and he has been very worried about what it will mean for him and even more so for his family. I talked briefly to Anthony.
Okay, so that's it. So
his family.
If he's
Who are these people? Where there's sudden pity for the collateral damage of lawfare. And this wouldn't even be lawfare. If indeed it's unjustified, America could see that. America could sit in judgment. America's so-called fourth estate could decide whether they were legitimate prosecutions or harassment. We could throw Donald Trump into the waste bin of history if we thought that he was doing that. But that won't happen. We won't see it. It won't even be possible. There will be no reconciliation for America. There isn't a possible reconciliation over the biggest issues of our time.
Well, as I've said, I think this last presidency is ending with more massive unanswered questions than any other presidency in our history.
Pardoning your family? Your family?
His family, yeah. Yeah, I mean,
James Biden, who I've been told is one of the biggest crooks in America, who is supposedly involved in medical and Medicare fraud at huge levels, was never even touched or reported on during this administration, except for people like Schweitzer, who wrote, books about family corruption. Okay. This guy, who we didn't even know was a player in this mob, just got pardoned. Why did he do the Hunter Biden pardon so early when he was planning to do everybody else? Well, that had a specific legal deadline involved.
So it looks to me like this whole thing was just a pre-bunking. They softened us up for this thing,
yeah,
which is 1,000 times more alarming than the Hunter Biden pardon. I'm sorry. Like, remember on this show, Walter, I was defending the Hunter Biden pardon to you, if you remember, and saying things that were not terribly popular with a lot of folks. This is totally indefensible. These pardons, they are precedent setting. They scare me. And even I even heard people like on MSNBC this morning talking about, even I think Claire McCaskill was one of the guests, and she was saying, can you imagine what the list is going to be like in 4 years? So everybody knows.
Fuck you.
Right, I understand. Like,
he was already president. He didn't pardon his family. He would
preemptively, but now that they've set the precedent that this is what you do, right? It's
nobody who wants to be remembered as anything more than an ant on the shoe of the shoe of the Statue of Liberty as it strolls along, or whatever the fuck Biden was talking about the other night in his oligarchical tirade about America being taken over by rich people. If I have ever seen an oligarchy in action, it's this one. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, my brother, my son, my family, we're all going to go off scot-free for unspecified crimes for a certain period. Oh, and Anthony Fauci, whose crimes may extend back to the beginning of a biowarfare program with China, is not going to be investigated and can't be. Well, he can be investigated. People think they can be forced to testify. Bullshit. They will skate on that just like they've skated on everything. And without a press that has any curiosity, and which in fact fears for its own reputation because it participated in this,
right,
we've got no chance. We may as well just literally take the book of America until 2024, January 20th, and throw it in the basket. Throw it in the basket. It's over, man.
Well, the Schoolhouse Rock thing is gone. I think we have to say, right? Like every 6-year-old once upon a time knew that there was no such concept as not exonerated, right? now, we're in this new universe where, people are getting preemptive pardons for things that they say that they're not guilty of. And it's totally bizarre. Let's look at the top of the hour. What's CNN saying about today? Probably they're going to be leading with the billionaires right in the front row, I'm guessing.
Whatever.
People who committed violent acts against the window
violent acts,
versus somebody
J6.
who committed a violent act against members
that's
of
what
law
they're doing.
enforcement.
This
Many
was
of
a
whom
big
were
Jake thing.
severely wounded on that day.
Yeah, and I think that even trying to parse those distinctions actually is part of
Oh my God, Abby
the Trump
Phillip.
play
Abby,
here.
get
Really
another
what we
job
should be
before they
talking about is
steal
the
your
fact that the
soul.
people
Get another job.
have been
No,
adjudicated.
it's late for her.
They've either taken plea deals or they've been adjudicated in a court of law, and they've been adjudicated.
They're really
in
going to
court
make
of
a
law
big deal
doing
about the
something,
J6
that
defendants.
Adjudicated in a court of law. Exactly what
Republicans,
these
many of
people are
whom
not having to
big
do.
Supporters of Donald Trump's now said he was responsible for lying to them and bringing them to the Capitol and instigating an insurrection. And so
I see.
even just this discussion about who should get pardoned and who shouldn't, I think is part of this process
How
of
dare
Trump
they?
normalizing the idea of him circumventing the law around this specific event, which is at the core of his failure.
The
Even to this day,
preservation of the
to
holy
acknowledge
January
that he
6th
lost the
holiday
last
has been
election,
what
that
this
he
is
lied to
all
his
about,
supporters,
dude.
that he fomented an entire conspiracy that still lives on around that lie.
Wait a minute.
And
What?
now he's going to pardon
He
people
fomented a conspiracy.
for acting on it.
I'm told that the ceremony is about to begin and we should listen in.
They pardoned the investigators.
All right, let's stop this. I can't watch this.
This is the worst double talk. If they are committed to this being the news from now on, then we live not just an upside down world, but an upside down, inside out, black is white, Orwellian hell. To watch that double talk for even 5 seconds on this day, all of it meant to absolutely obscure the nature of a story that they are implicated in, frankly, and certainly implicated by by a lack of real investigatory.
I think it's worse than that. I think they're the press, as with Russiagate, absolutely the press played, I would say, a non-traditionally corrupt role in that story, right? Like they were prime elements of, a corruption scheme. I don't know if they could be prosecuted for it, things that they did during that time. There were some leaks that probably are technically illegal, but that's a different issue. But the COVID issue, I mean,
what have they told the truth about in the last few years? Can you think of anything?
Almost nothing. And
I can't think of a damn thing.
They've turned their faces inside out about so many different things. Like, let's look at the way they talked about the possibility of preemptive pardons. Actually, this is the Jake Tapper tape we have from 4 years ago. This is Jake asking President-elect Joe Biden about the possibility of Trump doing preemptive pardons. Do we have that, Mr. That's, hang on a second. It's in here somewhere. Oh, we might have lost our mystery producer, so I'll find it. Hang on a sec.
Let me calm down and take a Buddhist breath here. I've flown from Montana to Washington. I've been eating dinner with Mike Tyson. Everything's a little adrenalized. I'll sit back and say this.
Mm-hmm.
What I believe as a lifetime journalist of 62 years old, and as a social being who's been around these people, gone to school with them, been at parties with them and so on, is that we are seeing the failure to reckon with decades of interlocking corrupt syndicates, which are now covering for each other. CNN is pardoning itself. Biden's pardoning himself. The former head of the military is requiring a pardon. And now they are engaged in a massive mutual cover-up of their own accountability, made possible by the removal of legal sanctions for what they did. They are now going to tell America a story about themselves, a revisionist story that actually covers a story that wasn't true in the first place. And that will be our news. You must abandon this self-interested narrative project, which is about the self-absorbed ass covering of American institutions, which we're working to deceive, and move and shift over to a new source of information, a new paradigm for information gathering that has to do with the truth and with some sort of correspondence between facts and stories.
Yeah.
If you don't, you are locked in their cover story, because that's all this is.
Yeah, it is. It's a cover story, but look at how dramatic the change is. So that we just heard Jake, right, talking about, oh my God, the horror of pardoning people who may have committed violent acts. And Abby, what about the conspiracy to foment insurrection? I mean, that's kind of a dramatic charge to make, right? On CNN. This is Jake 4 years ago. Oh.
Where did Jake come from?
I don't know. Oh, you know what, Mr. Producer? I think that's my fault. Hang on a second. You could. There we go.
President Trump is reportedly considering a wave of preemptive pardons. Does this concern you? All these preemptive pardons?
Well, it concerns me in terms of what kind of precedent it sets and how the rest of the world looks at us as a nation of laws and justice. You're not going to see an administration
even back then.
that kind of approach to pardons. Nor are you going to see in our administration the approach to making policy by tweets. It's just going to be a totally different way in which we approach the justice system.
President Trump is
he just made policy by tweet, didn't he? pretty sure.
What I just tried to say, probably only I appreciated because I was so inept in my expression. What we're watching now is the fruit of that interview and other interviews like it. The fruit of a collaboration between the press and political operation. None of it was sincere. None of it was authentic. It was all meant to gain and hold power, whether it was the 51 people who come out telling us that, Hunter Biden's laptop is a Russian operation, whether it's Jake Tapper trumpeting the Russia hoax and the Steele dossier. All of these streams of deception, which is what I'm going to call it now, have culminated in a president pardoning his own family minutes before he loses power, in order to subvert the inaugural address of the president, who I think found out about it about 5 minutes before he got up to speak.
And he looked pissed.
I would be pissed. I would have turned. Trump that whole time was probably going, do I turn to this president next to me and set a precedent of saying you should be ashamed of yourself to his face? Now, the way the Trump inaugural address played out dramatically was very interesting. It was, usually inaugural addresses are done on huge stands out in the cold with people arrayed and Marines and, frosty breath coming up from an audience of hundreds of thousands. This was a very intimate affair held in the Capitol Rotunda. Dude, Dana White was standing behind Barack Obama. People from the very select group who were allowed to witness this were shoulder to shoulder, and you could see them each in their expressions. Biden sitting next to Trump in his chair was like this a lot of the time. I don't know if you didn't see it. He was like this.
I saw a little bit of it. Yeah.
He was sort of semi-conscious. He was aware that he had just completely poleaxed this guy with this news. He didn't give a damn. I could not believe what I was seeing. It looked like if they had not pardoned themselves, they might have all been taken out in chains, because it looked like murderers row to me. You know, some of them looked very unhappy. Frankly, Obama looked scared. The other presidents, George Bush has some happy place that he goes to during these things. His features all gather in the center of his face, and his eyes kind of look out to the side.
I think that's because George Bush never thought of himself as a decision maker. So his conscience is relatively
Where's Dick
clear.
Cheney? Dick Cheney's still alive. Why isn't he here?
Is he still alive?
Yeah.
Cheney? Right. I guess
maybe. Maybe. I mean, it's a living death, his life, so I haven't been keeping track. But I believe he is.
Yeah, I think he is. Right. I'm sorry. Yes.
So where was he? In the Hall of Vice Presidents.
They just pardoned his daughter. So yeah. But I think that's the reason that Bush is always chill, because he unlike Obama, who I think is absolutely conscious of everything that he does. I mean, that's why even going back years, made all those kind of darkly ironic jokes about I didn't know I'd be this good at killing people, that kind of stuff. He's got to have
he's probably
some
regretting
questions about what's going on, and
he's probably regretting the norm which he actually observed of not pardoning your whole fucking family when you leave the presidency. He's going, why didn't I do that?
I know, and of all people to think of
Joe
it,
do
Joe
it for
Biden.
me?
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Why didn't Joe do it for me? Hillary's sitting there going, where's mine?
Well, okay. Well, this gets to another question. Look, we should spend some time on whether or not some things Trump said today were crazy. But I do think underneath all this stuff, all these pardons, one of the things that we've had trouble with over the last 8 years is there have been so many scandals, so many lies, so many things that have forced us to try to say, wait, is that true? What? And we spend all this energy trying to figure out what the source of the Nile is. But I do think we're now getting closer to what the bigger story underneath it all is. You start with things like who was really running the White House in the last 4 years, who was directing all these different lawfare operations, who's approving all these pardons. It's kind of all the same stuff, right? And once you get to answer that question, then you're dealing with one story as opposed to 5,000. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that's probably why Barack Obama looks nervous, I think.
As soon as I can escape my reactive mind, my monkey mind, and get back to the transcendental meditation self that we all know and love, I will ask myself whether this system and suite of pardons doesn't in some way, in a negative space fashion, indicate another kind of investigation is going on that will require, this could be what they call wish casting, and I think it is. I think it's 95% likely that it's wish casting. But there could be investigations going on which have a more targeted and surprising set of objectives, which will be served by this in some way. The major evidence against that is that Trump looked fit to be tied. When Biden went up the helicopter steps to depart the country that he so loves, Trump turned his fucking back on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think that there's some, for all Walter's hope that justice is just a little bit complicated and it will emerge from this farrago of, bloody entrails. I don't think so. I think that these people got away with murder.
Yeah, they're getting away with a lot. I do think there are going to be investigations, but the question is there going to be that one big global investigation of like, what the fuck did we just live through?
Do you know there's something called the or the Senate Committee on Investigations?
Yeah.
And who's the head of it? Do you know?
The PSI right now?
Ron Johnson.
Ron Johnson. Is it really? Okay. Mm-hmm.
Do you know what its budget is?
No.
I do. Guess. The Senate Committee on Investigations that may look into all this has a budget of, and I was told this by the person who would know best, $600,000.
No.
600,000. Not even Mike Myers' $1 million. It's $500,000.
Wait,
That's
okay.
their entire budget.
Wait. So this was the same.
Johnson told me.
Oh, I see. Okay. You mean the subcommittee on investigations? The permanent subcommittee?
I think that
the Senate
might be called. You know, he's a new senator from Wisconsin, or he just won re-election. Did he just win re-election?
Ranking member. Yeah, Ron Johnson. Yeah. So okay. So yeah, this is the
Why should I keep that a secret? It's not like he was telling anyone in confidence. $600,000 for all you can eat Senate investigations, and they're going to crack this thing.
Right. So this
they
committee,
can barely put you up at the Marriott if you're a witness from California.
This committee used to have the reputation on the Hill of being the creme de la creme in terms of Hill investigators who are looking into, say, white collar crime. They did a lot of the Wall Street investigations. They did, their final report on Goldman and what Wells Fargo is like this thick, and it was only a handful of people, and they are good. They were, I would say, like sort of top level. If you go to like a White and Case kind of law firm, there's always investigators on staff, right? They had people who were working in that committee who were really, really good at what they did once upon a time. But you can't do anything on $600,000. I mean, especially if you got to look at something big, you need a big staff. I mean, there's no way they can look into something that
of all the
wide-ranging.
Of all the statistics that have been thrown at me recently in my reporting, and that one floored me most. $600,000 for the Senate Committee on Investigations, not just the investigation of something, the investigation of everything.
Right.
And they're up against this thing. America needs to understand why Walter's so pissed off right now. The money and the resources and the energy for getting to the bottom of anything don't exist in government, really. And the desire on the part of the press, most of whom get $600,000 a month, like Rachel Maddow, is zero. In fact, their only incentive at this point is to cover their asses for basically camouflaging this whole set of operations for God knows how long.
I mean, it's really depressing that the traditional relationships that used to exist. It used to be that the good investigative reporters had a pipeline with the best Hill investigators because, they had subpoena power. They were looking at things, and a handful of really good ones can do some really good work. The Small Business Committee, they basically get killed before it reconstituted itself in the new budget. Obviously Jim Jordan's committee did that amazing 17,000 page report that's got tons and tons of stuff, and everybody ignored until Mark Zuckerberg gave an interview to Joe Rogan. All that stuff is in there because they dug it up. It's a handful of really good investigators can do great work, but nobody was reporting on it, right? And that the committee you were talking about that Ron Johnson took over, if it wasn't for them, we would never have gotten the Big Short stuff about Goldman. I mean, like a lot of the famous investigations in history can't come out of these congressional committees, and
Well, they might be able to
strangling them. That's not a good thing, you know.
We might be able to investigate a shoplifting case at the CVS across the street from me, and maybe, you know, a street crime a couple blocks away. But if you think they're going to nail Anthony Fauci to the wall, or the Biden family, or anyone else, you don't know what $600,000 buys in America.
Oh, right. I mean, obviously, somebody like Rand Paul has the determination to go after Fauci.
Well, other committees have their own budgets, and they can
have their own budgets, yeah, but it's still not a lot. You know, that's why the executive branch is so important, because they got money for stuff, as we saw, you know, with Russiagate. If you want to pour a whole bunch of resources into one thing, they can find ways to do it 100 different ways.
Mueller had a budget 60 times what the Senate Committee on Investigations. He had a $40 million budget, as I remember. You know, one of our show's favorite writers, Kurt Vonnegut, has one of the greatest quotes of all time. He says, "Everybody wants to build, but nobody wants to do maintenance." And nobody in America has wanted to do maintenance for a long time, man. You know, such that cities burn down, you know, aircraft carriers become inoperable, and so on. And if we don't start doing some maintenance, and I don't care whether it's under Donald Trump or, you know, Genghis Khan, we're in trouble. Because the Trump exception will no longer get you into heaven. And $600,000 will not keep the federal government in the United States honest.
No, it won't. And look, normally what they do is they pick one thing that they think is going to get headlines and go after it. And most of the committees, you know, during the last period in the Republican era, they, you know, you had the COVID committee went after Fauci. They went after the proximal origin authors, all that stuff. There were Jordan's committee went after the censorship thing. So yeah, they're doing the work. The problem is that it's not penetrating a whole side of American culture, because it's not reported on.
Today I'm in Washington, D.C., the place I grew up as a young child, across the river, tutored by a World War I infantry sergeant who had been the assistant director of what is now the National Oceanic and Atmospheric, whatever, NOAA. In those days, it was called the Coast and Geodetic Survey. He used to take me to the Smithsonian Museum as a little boy, and to the Cosmos Club, a very fancy insider in Washington social club. I'm an absolute Jeffersonian patriot, and a child of the Enlightenment ideal of America. I look up these marble statues and these base.
Oh, I fall for that shit every time. Yeah.
Oh, I see a shock of corn, you know, ringed by a band next to a kneeling Native American with the goddess of justice standing over it on some fucking portico on a building, and my heart throbs. Sucker. Well, I'm not, when I walked the Capitol Rotunda today, stained by this drama of a self-pardoning mob family sitting behind their new president, who they called Hitler, who they compared to our worst historical enemies and to the authors of genocides.
Yeah, almost daily too. That was the other thing.
Almost daily, and with a full choral supplementation from the press, including the disgraced Washington Post and the failing Washington Post. I think we can call it that now that it's lost 80% of its readers.
And okay, we got to bring this up because it's a thing. Jeff Bezos was at, speaking of the Washington Post, was at Trump's side today, and so was Elon Musk. So was Zuckerberg. This is going to be the big headline tomorrow. There's your oligarchy.
It's the most transparent oligarchy I've ever seen. I still don't know who made Kamala Harris the presidential nominee of the Democratic Party. I still don't know why Joe Biden didn't run against Robert Kennedy in the primaries. I still don't know a lot of things about COVID.
We don't know who wrote Joe Biden's tweet this morning. We don't know
a
million things.
Remember the phone call? This is the level of crap theater we've been put through. Remember the phone call in which Joe Biden?
Hey, Tim Wall. Oh,
Hey, Kamala Harris. She's walking along, and all we're hearing is the audio of a call that we don't know might be live, might be recorded, might be authentic, might be AI. And the American press is not asking one fucking question about the authenticity of it as she does this stage show for the cameras after we have seen a tweet about Biden's supposed endorsement of her. Well, today, even though he called her the historic vice presidency in his farewell speech, I saw two people sitting with the most reverse polarity body language I have ever seen between two members of the same party. Maybe Pence and Trump would be happier with each other than Kamala and Biden looked. They were literally angled away from each other. They loathe each other. Whatever went on there, I don't know. Hey, where was Nancy Pelosi, by the way? She's still recovering?
Well, she was certainly a subject of the discussion today. Did you hear what Trump said about her today?
Well, I know that Trump. See, I ran out after the inauguration speech, and my wife called me and said Trump's freestyling, and I was like, okay, the speech after the speech is probably the one I want to see, but I'm out in the street listening to YMCA.
Yeah, let me find it because it was pretty intense. He got into some he went to some places that even for Trump was a little bit intense today. Hang on a sec. But no,
we have a deficit of going places in America, in American politics. I don't care where they go for a while now, as long as it's not where they've been.
Yep. Hang on a second. Here we go. All right, here we go.
She knows it. She admitted it on tape that her daughter made. She's a videographer or whatever you call her, which I'm glad she is. Oh, she can't be in good stead with Nancy. But Nancy said it was my responsibility as she's leaving the Capitol. She said it was, and it was. She's in charge of security at the Capitol. But I offered them up to 10,000 soldiers, even more. One time I said more, as many as you need. But you needed 400 or 500. If 4 or 5, you 10,000, that would be more than the number of people there by lot. But we offered her 10,000. Think of it, 10,000 soldiers. In other words, J6 wouldn't be J6. There would have been no J6. But she rebuffed them. She didn't like it. No, she didn't like it. Maybe she wanted that to happen. But she's guilty as hell. And now we would have to go through the process because they destroyed all evidence. They deleted everything. There's virtually nothing left. The other fake story and so many other fake stories. And many people came out on our side. And those people now would got to find them. There's nothing left. So that's a criminal offense. If that were a civil case, it would be a criminal offense. If that happened civilly where you did that, it would be a criminal offense.
Destroying evidence? No, yes.
So yeah, and then
did they destroy evidence?
Well,
is Trump talking out his ass, or did they not?
Did they delete it? I don't know. I haven't covered that story, so I don't know enough about the J6 committee to talk about it. But I just wanted to. We should put this up as well. Hang on a second.
Matt, since we've had this show, remember when they went into Mar-a-Lago saying that the guy had somehow stored and maybe shared nuclear secrets?
Right.
Whatever happened to that bullshit?
Oh, I know. Well, they tossed that within a week. They just that was just something they brought up to distract the press.
Did the press report it?
Was totally
yes, they did.
Here we go.
2020, by the way, that election was totally rigged, but that's okay. It was a rigged election. You know, the only thing good about it, it showed how bad they are, showed how the border was totally fixed. There was nothing.
So, I mean, I don't think he planned to mention that today. but he was in a mood, clearly, from the beginning of the day, and saying that Nancy Pelosi is guilty as hell. Again, Walter,
his country's in a
playing devil's
mood.
advocate. We normally don't like it when presidents say things like that.
About what? About what? Nancy Pelosi? About former speakers of the House?
Yeah, if they're potentially defendants or something, like we don't like them to pronounce sentence before.
Well, we'll see if he prosecutes her. I doubt he will.
Right. If
you see, because ultimately the whole bullshit about Trump being vengeful is just that. There was never any evidence for it. We've been fed this story that this guy is so vengeful and so bent on the prosecution of people that they have to pardon themselves. But there's never been any evidence of it. Has there been?
Well, there have been statements, but that's not evidence. And especially when you go back and look at his first presidency. And again, as I've said before, this was one of the reasons why I didn't even consider voting for Trump the first time, because, I sat watching
lock her up.
And I thought, man, that's a little intense, like, I don't know if I want that. Right.
Well, try Hitler. They're gonna open camps for journalists.
I know.
Shouldn't all the journalists be leaving America right now? What makes them think, unlike Milley?
Well, some of them are, I think.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, Ellen DeGeneres, they can join her on the party boat of Elton John over there in the English Channel or whatever. But the problem is that all these people who claimed they had to defensively run away, pardon themselves, immunize themselves, and so on, don't have a jot of evidence for that supposed persecution. The only person actually who has real evidence of frivolous and harassing persecution and prosecution is Donald Trump. Right. And maybe Steve Bannon, who just got out of a fucking prison, and others. Dude, Bannon was thrown in jail by the committee that just pardoned itself.
Oh, I know.
I never thought of that until now. He just got out of jail before the election, having been put there by the fucking committee that just gave itself blanket pardons.
Using a charge that hasn't been used since the most infamous period of, the history of maybe not the most infamous period, but certainly in the last 100 years, going back to the Red Scare, contempt of Congress charges. And then now we have Jake Tapper whining about, letting off or pardoning the J6 defendants. These are ordinary people. We're talking about, using these tools to pardon high level politicians who may be involved in, enormous scandals, and you're cutting off avenues of investigation. It's just so much more significant. Even if everything they say about the J6 defendants is true, let's assume the absolute
worst.
What
do they say about them?
Well, the maximalist version of this story is that it was intended to cause a disruption to prevent the certification of Joe Biden as president, and that, as Abby Phillip was saying, it was a conspiracy to foment, disorder to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. That's their thing.
Never been charged, and never been charged, and never been proven. Most of those people are in jail for disorderly conduct and things like that.
Exactly. For
none of them
they got massively they were over punished for what's normally a misdemeanor, right? But they, I remember talking to one lawyer in the case of, there was somebody in the Twitter files who popped up as somebody who was going to be suppressed and also have their banking ability and their ability to use Venmo and PayPal affected, and got sentenced was one of the J6 people, got sentenced for disorderly conduct and got a 30-page sentencing memorandum. And I asked a defense lawyer, I said, have you ever seen a 30-page sentencing memorandum for a misdemeanor before? And he's laughing. Of course not, right? It's ridiculous. But what they were trying to do is they were trying to say, well, we think, yes, it's a misdemeanor technically, but really it's a coup, it's a plot, it's incitement, right? They couldn't prove incitement, so they just brought cases
Let
up.
alone conspiracy, which she just charged on fucking CNN,
I know.
as though it was a settled fact. And Jake, the fake, sits there nodding like we've all long ago agreed on that. That's been stipulated and proven. What in the world are these people doing? The news that they are now covering is the news of their own news in their own defense, because, having cooperated, not covered, and abetted all of the behavior that we have seen come to fruition, they are now devoted going forward to justifying themselves. And that's why we can't watch them anymore, because they now have a conflict of interest as far as Donald Trump goes, and as far as the last few years goes, and as far as the COVID story goes, and any story relating to January 6th, and any story relating to relations with Putin and so on. They have a conflict of interest in the sense that they are in jeopardy, maybe not of actually being charged with crimes, though they may be. Could be.
Kash Patel said that, and that's one of the reasons. But Walter, I wonder, you said that we can't watch them anymore, but MSNBC's on right now, running with the whole new oligarchy thing. Let's just listen briefly.
Happening right now. Elon Musk got into this speech a commitment to go to Mars. Right, there is a dispute inside the scientific community, inside the NASA, as to whether we should be going to Mars.
Mars is partisan now.
It makes Elon Musk an even richer man if the choice is to go to Mars. He got that.
Dude,
Mark
all your
Zuckerberg
fucking
went down to
policies make you
Mar-a-Lago
richer
and got
too.
Instructions to stop fact checking on Facebook. When asked, Donald Trump said, yeah, I'm sure he made that change because he was afraid of what I might do to Facebook when I was president. Right? This is the unraveling of our democracy.
Everything that happened at Facebook was because you people threatened them, and Mark Zuckerberg was scared of you.
Right, exactly. This economy are trading favors with Donald Trump behind closed doors, often where none of us can see it. And what is even worse about the moment today is that the first official policy that Trump is going to pursue here in Congress is a massive tax break for those billionaires and those corporations, paid for by devastating cuts to regular people.
Medicare, well, you're rich. What do you care, mister?
Education programs. This is a government for, by, and of the billionaires.
Can we stop for a second? Can we stop for a minute? Okay, so you just advanced the theory that going to Mars is a giveaway to Elon Musk. The entire fucking U.S. government and all its wars and all of its fucking defense strategies and policies profit about 5 companies.
Oh, yeah.
Chris, and they give you money. I know it.
Yeah. Do we think that there are any defense contractors? Let's look it up. Chris and Murphy.
Oh, by that reasoning, well, the rather voluntary war in Ukraine is a giveaway to Lockheed, Raytheon, etc. What? Going to another planet is all for the benefit of an individual? Oh, well, I didn't see Jeff Bezos has a space program too, right? I didn't see him pissed off about the Mars thing. But Chris, you're pissed off on his behalf because it's a giveaway to his other billionaire buddy?
Yeah, here we go. Here's his Defense Department proposal, American Jobs Matter Act, but it's a DOD, contracting bill to bring defense jobs to Connecticut. I'm not sure which companies those are, but we can be.
Oh yeah,
it's probably Electric Boat and General, right?
All the New London,
all the submarine companies,
submarine manufacturers.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Oh, wow. So now government policies all must be examined for which rich person they might benefit and what stockholders they might benefit. Well, let's start with you, Chris. I mean, let's just start at home. That's like saying the moon landing was a General Electric conspiracy, because I promise you NASA didn't manufacture the hardware.
No, I know. And yeah, the idea of going to, I'm not against going to Mars. I think that's kind of a cool idea.
Well, it's the logical next step in if we're going to have a space program.
We did
the
all
moon.
the other things, right? I mean,
we did the moon. We apparently have forgotten how to get there.
Right.
We destroyed the plans or the equations or whatever it was, the blueprints. Now a guy wants to go to Mars, not on your dime, actually. Somewhat, of course, in reality, but using a private corporation that is also a defense contractor and so on.
Right.
Where do these mothers get off, man? Why don't they spend 2 minutes longer on the manufacture of their fake talking points and their fake?
Because they don't have to, Walter. That's the whole point. They
put them right on the air.
Yeah.
Nobody said, "Hey, Chris, who did the Ukraine war benefit? Hey, Chris, who does NATO have to buy arms from when a country becomes a NATO country? It has to buy arms at a certain level. It has to have a defense budget at a certain level, and it buys most of those from American companies. So is NATO a for-profit scheme for American defense manufacturers?
Of course it is. It drives the whole American economy. It's just the question of which billionaire you want to give the money to, right? And I'm not in favor of that necessarily.
Did your 3-company COVID vaccine program, of which one company, Johnson & Johnson, dropped out, which profited Pfizer at a level? Pfizer made more money in a year than it had made since its founding in the 1900s. Well, I want it all back, man. I want all that billionaire money you guys spent back in the name of the class war that you're now, claiming to be such a fan of.
And the other thing, him talking about Mark Zuckerberg shaking in his shoes and eliminating fact checking because he's so afraid of Donald Trump. I have to say, when I see Chris Murphy, I have an instant reaction to recoil because I saw his name so many times in the last 2+ years, looking at this whole rat's nest of anti-disinformation complexes. He's one of the central promoters of the censorship bureaucracy, not just here, where, for instance, he was just pressing Marco Rubio about, getting rid of GEC, although we don't think he named it by name, but he essentially wanted to preserve the anti-disinformation quotient of the State Department's mission. But he's also been a person who was involved in international negotiations to get the United States wrapped up in these kind of quasi-European speech agreements. Like, here we have him talking with the Brussels Forum, right? Trying to get with the German sponsored by the German Marshall Fund, which is the group that did Hamilton 68, right? If you remember correctly, and he's introducing a piece of legislation that's designed to put European and American democracies together in an anti-disinformation scheme. And he's complaining that Mark Zuckerberg's afraid of Trump. Well, this is the stuff that they were trying to get out from under, I don't know. I'm sorry. I get hot about this shit.
Does he want Mark Zuckerberg, who spent $400 million on drop boxes to get Biden elected? $400 million. That's what he spent on that, modification of our rules in which people can just drop off ballots in trash cans labeled, official. And he wants that guy. Did that guy do that out of the goodness of his heart? Or did he do it, Mark, because he wanted to be in the good graces of the federal government, which he helped elect? Probably
a little bit of both. I mean,
Yeah. I think Mark got all these people on his board or on his staff. 40,000 fact checkers. Come on, 40,000. We just told you the 600,000 budget of the House or of the Senate subcommittee on investigations. Well, Mark Zuckerberg had a capability light years beyond that to go after you and me, because that's who they were going after.
And that's that's the norm. If you look, they have fact checking sort of centers in places like Germany that where all that you have thousands of people sitting in these complexes just looking at content all day long because they have to stay in compliance.
And none of whom, when they're fact checking medicine, are doctors.
Right.
When they're fact checking, law, they're not lawyers. All their what the hell requires that much manpower? Actually, I wonder. I mean, the fact is that Chris Murphy has been, and his ilk have been, the beneficiary of corporate collusion at levels almost never seen before in American history. And they're calling out in advance something like a Mars mission. I'm prepared to lay waste to Donald Trump if I have to. If I see him breaching the morality and ethics that have traditionally governed our country, if I see him going back on promises that I believe are essential to our, functioning as a society, if I see him lying, if I see him doing whatever. But I will no longer make the Donald Trump exception for all they did. And as far as I'm concerned, you got the unburdened by the past wish that you wanted, because I'm unburdened by the past. I'm unburdened by them. I'm unburdened by their bullshit rhetoric. I'm unburdened by their, illogic and their self-serving and hypocritical justifications for their own behavior. I'm unburdened by the mainstream press and its, behavior through all this, which has been absolutely crucial to everything that's happened. They're keeping the January 6th myth alive. Well, the January 6th committee is out the back door with a pardon. CNN's taking the job now.
I know. It's all shocking. I mean, like this last minute pardon situation. It's such a huge story, and you can see they've just moved on. It's not even really a topic. I mean, they did an 8-minute hit this morning on MSNBC, but apart from that, there's just been very little coverage of that story, and what little they did cover is all from the perspective of, well, they were afraid of retribution, they're afraid of vengeance. Almost nothing about the actual situation.
Matt, let's let this, because I'm from Montana, not go unremarked on. Leonard Peltier, the American Indian Movement activist, was pardoned today.
Yes, I forgot about that. Yes.
I don't know if he was pardoned for his behavior in the Wounded Knee standoff of the mid-'70s, or it was for other crimes. But he was someone who was involved in a shootout with federal agents. He may have killed two of them. I believe those are the convictions that he was pardoned for. Back in South Dakota with Russell Means during the 1970s on the Wounded Knee Reservation, 100 years after the Wounded Knee Massacre, something went on that was pretty terrible and pretty enmeshed in the deepest currents of American history and American sin. I do not begrudge Leonard Peltier his freedom one bit today. Okay. No. That's who I am. In fact, there is part of me that says that's what the pardons are for. That's what the pardons are for. And to mix that in was yet another offense.
Oh, I know, because it's cover.
Oh my God.
It's countermeasures, right? It's like what, to make another submarine reference, it's like what you dump out to make the
to take a guy who's actually been in prison and give yourself moral cover for not ever having to even stand trial was disgusting.
Yep. To this question by Colleen, why is Matt so shocked? Like it wasn't so foreseeable. I got to cop to this. This has been consistently, I've made this mistake repeatedly in the last 8 to 10 years or so, where I underestimate how far they're going to go. Failure of imagination for me led to not understanding the Russiagate story. I didn't think that they would lie on the scale that they did about COVID. That story was a surprise to me. I didn't think that we would find what we found in the Twitter files, because it seemed impossible that there would be such a broad effort to to do the censorship thing. And even when we talked about, even when they hinted to us that they were going to do this earlier, before the new year, I didn't think that they were actually going to go through with it. And I don't know why I still have that reflex, but I guess we have to get rid of that, right? I mean,
so Matt, we were told, or you were told, I think, and you told me weeks ago, and I had independent confirmation of this, that Biden was going to issue about 30 or 40 pardons, big headline pardons.
Right.
It's hard to count them now.
Yes, I was told that. Yeah.
It's hard to count them now because so many of them, the J6 thing is kind of a class pardon. It's like pardoning draft dodgers or marijuana users or whatever. It doesn't specify names that I can see. It's sort of a class of people. Well, his family, what were there 5 or 6 of those, including Hunter? Weren't there 5 on today's pardon?
There were also some other pardons that were less newsworthy.
And there were the commutations of the federal death penalty targets, subjects, 30 or so.
Right.
Their sentences were commuted. We had the Biden family that took up fully, 1/5 or 1/7 of the 30 or so, or 35 that were predicted. We had Anthony Fauci, Millie, and we had, I'm not sure who else, Peltier.
And there were 5 others, and unfortunately, they're kind of hard to find because Trump has already taken over the White House website. So if you have to go to the Wayback Machine to look for the original announcements now. But I think if you add them up in terms of the politically serious ones, it's probably exactly 30 to 40. If you take the committee, right? The family members, that's what, 5. Millie.
Oh, and then let's cover it with Leonard Peltier.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
A freaking American Indian from the, Sioux Reservation in South Dakota who battled it out, whether he was a stark raving radical madman or not, with the federal law enforcement in a fair fucking fight with guns, as far as I'm concerned. Whether or not I have a pure view of the case, I don't know, but it went on as a little boy. And my 5th grade teacher forced us to sit there in Minnesota, in small town Minnesota, and watch the damn thing on the news while he told us all the things that were wrong with Indians. In Minnesota, you don't get much exposure to racism. It's Norwegians versus Swedes. That was the ethnic. No, literally, I was telling somebody last night at the Mike Tyson event or dinner or whatever, that my youth was filled with one sort of idea of, intertribal conflict. Norwegians and Swedes, some Lutherans and some Catholics at each other's throat over hockey games mostly.
Right.
But I did get exposure in 5th grade watching some damn TV that they put into our classroom about the Wounded Knee standoff, which went on day after day. And as my teacher, who I won't name, sat there and told us about the disgusting slovenly practices of the American Indian, I was born a liberal, which I wish I could stay. But frankly, these people have poisoned the very idea of it, and that they lay that guy as cover on their fucking self-interested, corrupt international dealings probably makes me sicker than any of this now that I think about it.
Yeah, I think probably it's a sense of like disappointed idealism that makes me angriest about all of this. I mean, I even got into it with sort of a friend of mine today who is sort of a big Bernie supporter, because they're going off on the whole billionaire oligarchy thing. It's like, really, like there weren't billionaire private equity.
It's all they've got. It's all they've got. Their new Luigi consciousness.
Billionaires crushed the Bernie movement, right? But they were in. It was an intramural thing. They were the other billionaires, right? They just had the good sense to hide, except when they ran them for president as an emergency. Remember Mike Bloomberg? They pulled off the bench to try to save the ticket in 2020 before they settled on going back to Joe Biden. Devil Patrick, right?
Dude,
another Wall Street friend, right?
It's nonsense. Taylor Swift is a damn billionaire. David Geffen,
Reid Hoffman,
Reid Hoffman,
yeah.
the Soros family, the Crown family, the Crown family of Chicago. You want to know something funny about the billionaire support of American politicians? The ones who are really behind shit, you don't know their names.
Right. Mostly you don't normally. Right?
The Chicago billionaire families that
the Pritzkers and we know them, but yeah,
we know them. The Crown family, etc. The people who have created fortunes in the recent years actually are looked down on by the old school billionaires, and we saw that at the Democratic convention with the Pritzker dismissal of that nouvelle non-billionaire Donald Trump, who somehow made up his net worth.
Well, look, Trump isn't really, and this is one of the things that I got into it with people about Russiagate. The reason that he had to cold call the Kremlin about the hotel project once upon a time, they sent like an email to Kremlin.ru or whatever it was, which they eventually got a response to, but the reason that happened is because Donald Trump isn't considered rich in Russia.
Remember a guy? I remember one of the first billionaires that I was made aware of, because I didn't grow up in the world of billionaires, and America didn't either, frankly. I remember when Lee Iacocca was considered a rich person, rich person.
But he's not, though. I mean, that's my point, though. Real rich people, we now see how much money they actually have. I mean, Bezos is a real rich person.
Does the name Ted Turner mean anything to CNN?
Of course, Ted Turner, right? Yes. I mean,
CNN. Do they remember that dude?
Yeah.
Do they remember the fortunes, the various fortunes behind Time magazine, which at one, Time Life once owned? I don't know if they merged with CNN or what it was, in their strange set of associations with AOL and then CNN and so on. Do they remember somebody named, Henry Luce? What are they fucking talking about? Franklin Roosevelt, FDR's vice president, Henry Wallace, founder of the American Progressive Party, a third party, vice president from 41, I think, to 45, was one of the richest men in America. When did this happen?
And I think he was the inspiration for God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, if I'm not mistaken. The Vonnegut book.
He may have been. He may have been. He was a very left-wing character. Does the word Roosevelt mean anything to them? Does any of this make any sense whatsoever? No. You know what they hate about these guys? They're not just rich; they're smart. I swear that's what I think they don't like about them. They're not just a bunch of fucking alcoholics sitting around a club room somewhere deciding who's going to be president. They're Diablo world champions or whatever, like Elon Musk. They're Jeff Bezos, who has completely, sucked up the retailing industry of America, and until recently was thought to be a wonderful publisher of the Washington Post.
Right, and now he's the enemy. But actually, I think that this is a good place to kind of wrap up a little bit. Like, okay, so the big stories today are, I think these pardons are an explosive story. Unfortunately, they're not going to be followed up nearly as much as they should be. But then, in terms of the inauguration, as you see, they're leading the top of the hour with the billionaire oligarchy message. I do think it's a big political mistake by Trump. I have to admit,
to do what?
To be so publicly associated, especially with Bezos and Zuckerberg.
Couldn't agree. Couldn't disagree more.
Really?
Could not disagree more. Matt, I don't know where some people live, but in the rest of America, these people are looked at as hopeful signs that intractable problems that have not been addressed by the biggest government in world history and the most indebted bureaucracy in world history might actually have solutions that will allow us to survive the next decade. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg, whatever else they may be, are looked at by America as harbingers of the possibility that our multi-trillion-dollar indebted do-nothing government that can't even, as Trump said today and is true, rescue the people in a flood zone in North Carolina may be able by some other means powered by the sort of savvy of great capitalists solve the basic problems of governance without going broke and leaving us in complete despair and destruction. They put those people up there not because they want to show oligarchical strength, but because they want the 24-year-old kid out somewhere to think there's fucking hope. That's why. That's why. Okay. And they're going to love him for it, because no matter what Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, or whatever do, they got rockets that go into space. And what does Biden have? A family that participates in some kind of skimming operation for which they've had to pardon themselves.
Okay, I'm going to retort quickly. So I get what you're saying. Like, I remember being on the campaign trail in Iowa in the last cycle and having former Bernie supporters tell me why the people in their town were voting for Trump. And they're saying, okay, most of us we're not on farms anymore. We had to leave our jobs. We work at places like Walmart. And we don't believe the government rolls in here, or politicians roll in here every 4 years. They promise solutions. They never happen. But when the boss of our companies says something is going to happen, we believe them. Yep. Because that's the case. So therefore, that's why people are voting. The businessman who says he's going to fix everything is more believable than First John Edwards, than whoever it is. You know what I'm saying? That these people, they're interchangeable. They roll in every few years and they never deliver. I get all that. That all makes sense. I'm just saying, from an optics point of view, Trump benefited massively from being outraised by the Democratic Party, from being, realistically, the Democrats became the party of rich people in the last 10 years. I also think Zuckerberg and Bezos are going to, if they were to do that global investigation, those names would pop up quite a lot.
Zuckerberg and Bezos are Johnny-come-latelys, okay? They weren't on the campaign trail. They have come into the tent for some selfish reason of their own. Let's hope that it's worthwhile for the great American public. But they've exposed themselves. Unlike most billionaires in America who operate behind the scenes, make phone calls, work through cutouts, use party organizations and all kinds of screens to hide their influence, these dudes are willing to stand up there and have their faces be shown and make promises and answer to them in a way that will be humiliating if they fail, frankly.
I get it. I'd rather see them. I'd rather, know where they are, see their faces.
Look at FDR's wartime cabinet. Look at that group of people. Anyone who wants to do some research into American oligarchy.
Of course, Walter. I'm just saying, Trump just got elected after wave after wave of fake stories were thrown at him.
And you know what? He won the state. He won the state in which Elon Musk jumped up and down on stage for a month. Meaning there was a plebiscite on this question. And they won.
Okay, maybe that's temporarily. Musk is going to be is popular. He's a detractor from the cabal a little bit of billionaires. But I'm just saying,
if I was Trump,
if they can successfully point him to call Trump and tar him as the billionaire politician, the politician of billionaires, that will stick. The other things will not.
Who will they be? Who will they be?
Whatever's left of the media, maybe.
The thoroughly discredited network news? No. Who will they be? the populist leftists from the Democratic Party, the few who are left, AOC and Bernie, who, bent down at the freaking Democratic convention to
I agree
follow
with you.
up
I'm
for
just saying, I think,
Pritzker.
yeah.
America's past it. America wants to see shit work again. America wants to feel like it can walk safely down the street. I want to be able to go to the gym in my town without fucking weird criminals being there at 11:30 at night, which never used to happen before. The truth is that America wants results, because if it doesn't get them now, its kids will never have houses. Its cities will burn down in dubious accidents, which seem to point to negligence on the part of state governments, which won't take responsibility for them. America is in a crisis out there as to whether it lives or dies, whether or not it can cover itself in, medically, using all these schemes which the Democratic Party has advanced as, class warfare and have made things even more expensive, whether they can drive on roads that are falling apart, whether they can walk through streets that are safe enough that you can actually do it at night when the lights are dim. They don't give a flying fuck about billionaires.
Yes, but they should, Walter, because a lot of the reason that shit doesn't work is because you have KKR and Cerberus Capital buying up things that used to be family businesses or locally owned businesses
under the Democrats.
Right. Yes, of course, but they're still billionaires. You know what I'm saying? So,
that we've bought into that rhetoric is ridiculous. A billionaire is not a billionaire. There's no such class. That's a number. Okay. That's like saying everybody with 10 million frequent flyer miles is the same. Okay. Some of them do one thing. Some of them do another thing. Some of them are Larry Fink, who, does some inscrutable thing with capital that we'll never quite understand.
Yeah, he's a tick on the face of the Fed, basically. Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and
bond trader.
Yeah, and some of them are, somebody who invented a piece of software or, whatever it might be. They're very different people. Jeff Bezos is very different than Elon Musk. Mark Zuckerberg, I don't understand at all. I think he was created in a lab. I mean, but the problem is that they aren't a class. The Democrats are very good at saying you are what you are by virtue of your membership in a group. You're this race, you're that you're that gender, and that so on. These guys, I promise you, when they look around the room at each other, they don't say, "Oh, my fellow billionaires." They go, "That dude doesn't know how to do this, and that dude's stupid, and that guy faked his way, and and that guy isn't actually rich." And da-da-da-da. To try to create another class for Americans to hate, the billionaires, after the gender thing didn't work, after the racial thing didn't work, after the fucking age differences, things didn't work, the Zoomers versus the Boomers and everything, they specialize in this. But this is a fake class, and they are as guilty as anybody. And it will take about 5 seconds for the average 7-year-old to figure out that they are talking about their own donor class as though it's some external force.
That's true. You're right. You're absolutely right. It's not legitimate to just say all billionaires are the same. I'm just saying there are an awful lot of pissed off people out there, and a lot of that rage isn't wholly directed at government bureaucracy. It's also directed at people who are massively overpaid for work that they do. You know what I'm saying?
You want to know the difference between Elon Musk and U.S. government? When I order Starlink, I get for $120 a month or whatever they charge me. Mm-hmm. I get a satellite dish. I even get mini Starlink for an extra charge, which I just got, which I can carry in my truck. I put them on my house and they give me internet. When I give the U.S. government $150, what do I get?
Shit. I know.
Well,
you don't even get answers.
Yeah. So who likes what? Do you like the people who create products that you actually want and pay for willingly? Or do you want the people who just take it all and, I don't know, shoot missiles into Russia and can't figure out how to stop fires or, help flood victims or lower crime or fix the streets? Those guys are going to be the new heroes if they manage to do 20% of what they've promised. because they will seemingly solved an intractable problem in America since the 1960s, which is, where does all this social welfare and infrastructure money? Dude, we had the infrastructure bill, $1 trillion bill. Have you noticed? Have you gone out and seen any potholes that weren't filled before by the federal government? I haven't.
No, and you're right, and also these billionaire-owned companies, they were actually victims of, for instance, the whole censorship situation, right? Like, they were put upon by government officials in a way where we had to rally behind them, and so they do have a real reason to rise up and fight back, and it's in our interest and all these other things. I'm just saying, if I were advising Donald Trump as a media consultant, I would say this is not the way I would do it, because there's a risk there. And you and I disagree on this.
But I'm the guy who said he would win the election. I had no doubt about it. And I'm going to tell you what, Americans in the world of, I'm earning from $40,000 to $200,000, and maybe I have a family and I want to have a home, and maybe I want my kids to go to college. Don't begrudge Elon Musk one thing. They just hope their kids can go to work for him someday.
No, and this is something Democrats have always misunderstood about the very rich, which is that voters don't hate them because they're rich. Actually, most people sympathize with the desire to get rich, and they're fine with it. It's the cheating that they hate. It's the cutting corners. It's fucking up and getting bailed out like all the people did after 2008, or like the currency speculators who massively bet in the early 90s, and they would have lost their shirts, but they made a few phone calls and got a rescue in that case, or long-term capital management, or whatever it is, right? They hate that. They hate the unfairness of it.
I wish they had made Ivan Boesky and Michael Milken stand behind U.S. presidents. The billionaires that are willing to show their faces, to me, are the first prime cut of billionaires. The ones who sit down in their inscrutable State Street Capitol and other offices, making decisions that affect all of us, while we never get to
telling
know
us
their names.
where to go to war and all this other stuff. I'm with you, Walter. I am. I'm just saying that there's some. But you were right. You were right that about the political strategy.
Matt, let's look at my biceps. Okay, they're not bad for a 62-year-old dude, but they're not Mike Tyson's. Do I begrudge Mike Tyson the ability to knock out some of the toughest people in the world? No. Because I know he fucking trained hard. He made a point of it in a way that I never will. I've got other, goals and so on. Do I begrudge people who made their whole life about building a business and making $1 billion? No,
but we don't like Barry Bonds either. That's the whole point. Like, we don't, because we don't like cheaters, and there's a thing about being rich and using influence. How
did Warren Buffett skate on this whole billionaire thing?
Oh, I know.
How did Bill Gates skate on it? Bill Gates is in charge of a fucking. He gives a significant portion of the World Health Organization's budget. He's in control in some fashion of world health policy, and was, in terms of COVID, probably, along with Fauci and a couple others, the chief orchestrator. Dude, he was on CNN half the fucking nights I watched it, telling us what to do, even though he's not a doctor.
Yep.
That's who Americans hate. That's who America's sick of. If I was Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg and I had to answer, well, I don't like Zuckerberg that much. And Musk, frankly, Matt, you get this rap every day, all day on fucking Twitter of being his, apologist. I will tell America, not looking you in the eye, he's been harder on you than anyone in this country. And that you even tolerate the conversation in a way that is unemotional shows that you are a detached journalist, frankly. And I admire it. And I will say that from the heart. But as a group, these people, compared to the Bill Gateses of the world, are nothing. They are not telling you how to live your life. They are not affecting the health policy that will cause your family to live, die, have to take a vaccine or not. They are asking only to rationalize the operations of the U.S. government such that we don't all go broke and our currency becomes valueless.
It's true. You're right. I would just say the triumph of this year, if like today, all the people that you're complaining about, they would have succeeded in, in this, a lot of diabolical schemes, if it not because of not for the intercession. I'm sorry, not because Elon Musk and all these other people got involved, but because 70 plus million voters, ordinary people, threw them out, and they're the heroes today. And I wouldn't want to put the spotlight on those folks today.
That is
if I were the media strategist. That's all I'm saying.
That is true. Because the truth is that for all the fake populism of Tim Walz and, AOC and so on, the people who elected Donald Trump live in the less affluent parts of Pennsylvania and places like it. And the American working class or middle class, let's call it that, managed a feat this year that is historic. It took away the presidency of the United States from the most connected, well-heeled, billionaire-backed, military-industrial complex approved, intelligence agency beloved, media gilded group of insiders in history. The guy at Jiffy Lube just took the guy on at Morgan Stanley and told him to pound sand. And God bless them, I say, because I don't think without this small revolution in our affairs, we would have much faith left in anything. We would all just be running for cover and going like, I'm done with this America thing. I'll act in a Soviet way on the outside like I still believe it, but give me a break. I've got to protect my ass while everything goes down. I don't even know what's going to happen in my city. I don't know if there's going to be a thermonuclear war. I don't know if the drones will come over my city too, and I'll have to watch them every night without being told what the hell they are.
Yeah, no, and you're right. It's the Jiffy Lube guy who and all those folks. My
apologies to the real Jiffy Lube guys. I didn't want to make you into a category,
Right.
But I'm going to say it. It's a rhetorical strategy. These people had more common sense than the Pritzkers and the political machines and the Clinton Foundation and the Ford
Bill
Foundation,
and Melinda Gates Foundation,
and Bill and Melinda Gates and
Craig
Warren
Newmark
Buffett.
Foundation.
Yes, and let's list them all. Americans of the fast oil change industry, which we won't name the specific outlet for.
Right.
You flexed your muscles and you won, and I don't know how you did it.
Yep. And thinking about Fauci today, I also thought about the little tiny group, U.S. Right to Know, that started the whole ball on peeling back the gain of function story by filing a gazillion freedom of information requests. If not for that little organization, a lot of this stuff would never have gotten out. So I don't know. I wonder about the optics of it, but that's a minor question, and it'll depend on how things pan out in the future. But anyway,
Matt, we had a good debate over it. We'll see how it plays out. I'm not committed to any position for an egotistical reason. I'm simply advancing an argument that arises from observation. But I will say this: I found it breathtakingly heartening today to see what was obviously actual political change. Now, Matt, think about all the inaugurations of the past and the transitions of the past. The transition from George Bush Jr. to Barack Obama. The transition from George Bush Sr.
I remember that was freezing cold, by the way, that day. Mm-hmm.
But dude, was there any angst involved? Was there any real conflict involved? No. You know why? Because it was one team that is a subdivision of the big team, passing off power to another team that's a subdivision of the same big team, in the faith that they will get it back in this routine and cyclical fashion, which we call establishment politics in the US. That there was actual conflict and actual fear on the faces of people today was indicative of a real transfer of power. In other words, where people lose it and other people get it. Not a transfer of power that's just like a color shift. But people get lost, people lose stuff, and other people gain it who don't like each other. For that to be peaceful, and it barely was in some ways, is amazing.
It's the first time it's happened in our lifetimes, I think.
Yes, I guess that's the takeaway. We saw power actually change hands. And for all those people who think everybody's the same, it's two wings of the same bird, you know, it's the uniparty, it's this, it's that. That's not what I saw. I saw one side having to cover its ass using the most outlandish legal strategies, while power transferred to another group that they despise and have called the worst things in the world, and frankly, which probably despises them. And the miracle was they didn't shoot.
Yeah, this was all done without real violence. And yeah, it was a historic day for that reason. This has been 8 years in the making. It's been a fight, you know, where all the chips were in the middle of the table the whole way. And it's an amazing story. We focused on the corrupt side of it today, but the other side of it, the kind of regaining, actually throwing these people out, is a pretty incredible story, and then we got to see it today. So, anyway, a lot of stuff to go through. You got to go on the air tonight. Everyone should watch Gutfeld tonight. Walter's going to be on.
So today, you know, when we were at the Republican convention, I did Gutfeld, and you came to the studio, and it was in the top of a restaurant or something. Okay, and it was pretty low key. So I figured it would be the same kind of thing. And so I called up today and said, you know, is there going to be an audience and everything? Oh, yeah, it's going to be a Constitution Hall with 900 friggin' people. And I'm scared, okay? When you tune in, if you do, to Gutfeld, look into the eyes of a scared man. Because
Are you going to wear a Kevlar vest?
No, it's not that I'm not scared of bullets and so on. I'm scared of that audience, and I'm scared of being part of an occasion which I feel rather puny in contrast to.
Right. I get it. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're gonna ace it, Walter. You're great in front of crowds and on TV for that matter. So,
we'll see.
Anyway, folks, thanks for hanging in with us for much longer than usual. But we get, you know, Mom and Dad had a little fight tonight, but we still love each other. And
my wife says, "Why don't you guys fight more?"
No, this is all interesting, but on the serious side, huge news day. There's still more to get to, and I think, you know, later in the week we'll have more stuff to go through. And Walter, have fun tonight,
Matt.
And thanks everybody for hanging out.
I am so appreciative that you were able to accommodate me today. We did not use our regular time slot, and
of course,
we'll be back to that, but. Tonight I have to go to Constitutional Hall and crap my pants.
Right. You just, if you gotta let one out, just don't make it audible. So all right, everybody, thanks a lot. We'll see you later. All right, take care.